Hello, you are tuning into Uneducated Guests with Josiah. I'm your host, Josiah. I'm a senior in high school that has to do a project for a or for a college class, but I didn't feel like looking anything up. So here I am. Today's project is on Egyptian gods and their cats. It is the third episode in my three-part animal-esque mini-series that is going to be episode 13 through 6. Wait, that's not right. 12 through 15. 12 through 15 or 13 through 16, one of those two. I just realized it was an upload day for me. It is Tuesday that I'm recording these three on. Well, these three first parts anyway. So I should probably make this one quicker than the others because I've got to leave earlier than normal. I know you guys probably don't care, but I'm just saying that because I'm kind of freaking out now. But the Egyptians tended to worship cats, right? I'm not sure why, so I'm going to look that up later. But cats were like the cows to Indians to them, basically. I mean, I'm making this comparison lightly because it was obvious they worshiped cats with the way they immortalized them in their artwork and their statues. They even built like the Great Sphinx. Is it the Great Sphinx? Because I know there's the Great Pyramid of Giza, or is it just the Pyramid of Giza? I'm gonna go into all this later, hopefully, if I remember. But they did worship cats. That's obvious by the way they portrayed them in their artwork. They portrayed them as gifts from the gods. I'm pretty sure that they were like holy and that like you don't harm a cat and stuff like that. Egyptian cats were kind of cool. They were the big cats, not necessarily like big as like tigers and stuff, but they were pretty decent sized cats. I really like cats. If you haven't known this, I'm a very big fan of all animals except geese. I really hate geese. Like, if all the geese died right now, I probably wouldn't be that mad because I really, really hate geese. But I do really love cats. Cats are amazing. And in a lot of their artwork and different things, they showed their gods as different animals and stuff like that. Like Anubis, the god of the dead and burial rites, I'm pretty sure is what he was. Maybe it's not burial rites. I mean, it might be, but like embalming and stuff like that. That's actually, I could go into that too, because this is Egyptian gods and their cats. But Anubis was generally portrayed as a dog, I'm pretty sure, or at least having a dog head, which is really interesting to me because most gods, or most humans, like Greeks and different things like that, all portrayed their gods as giant humans. But the Egyptians went a different route and portrayed them after animals. Like, I believe there is one god that like portrays himself as a bird of some sort, either a falcon or something of the sort. But I just think that's really interesting. So their gods are technically animorphs, which is the first episode of this. I think I mentioned that possibly. But animorph gods is a really interesting concept to me, that they would view their gods as coming to them as animals, or maybe it's like the Native Americans where they visualize spiritually through ritualistic hallucinations and drugs like that. Maybe they like did peyote or something of the sort back in those times, and they viewed these animals as more than they were. They viewed them as holy, viewed them as spiritual. And I think that's really cool. I will be looking this up. I will be looking up their religion, basically. The pyramids of Giza. And, like, there's, like, 3 pyramids, I think, in Egypt. But I've always heard about this, that they're like, oh, they couldn't have had that technology. And people are like, oh, yeah, aliens built it. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, it is a plausibility because I do believe that there's aliens. But the humankind got contacted by them. There's so many different theories about how the pyramids were made, but I'm more interested in their cats, obviously, because pyramids are like, yeah, they use slave labor and stuff like that. We already learned about that. it's not really much to theorize. They had good architecture, they had different things like that. Like, there's a lot of civilizations that we don't know anything about because they lost their stuff at the times. Like, that's probably just what happened. They probably figured all this stuff out, and they're like geniuses. Like, I can't remember what other cultures did stuff like that. Or the Mayans. The Mayans built pyramids too, but their pyramids were more blocky and square. But I'm pretty sure they were still like pretty big pyramids. Maybe not as big as the Egyptians or something like that. I will look that up though, because as we know, uneducated guess makes me more smart as I learn things. So I do enjoy learning about stuff. I enjoy like these 3 topics, obviously, but the cat statues are everywhere. Like the Great Sphinx, I mentioned this already, but think about how large he is. Like, you're not even like, I'm pretty sure it's like a small, or like a car is the size of his paw. And, like, yeah, it's faded over time, but, I mean, they're working with sandstone here and, like, lime and stuff like that. Limestone, not lime. Yeah, they're only working with fruits, you know? It's kind of interesting. I'm sorry, I'm kind of just freaking out a little bit. But the way Egyptians worshipped and stuff like that, I think is really interesting. And their hieroglyphics are actually really interesting to me. Like, yeah, they picture, like, it's like pictures and stuff, but archaeologists still haven't fully discovered what the Egyptians were saying in their hieroglyphs and stuff like that, which is actually really cool that they made such a strange language, such intricate language that we still haven't even deciphered it. It's like Latin, it's kind of lost, but we can still just figure that out more. I think Latin, we know what that is. We just, no one speaks it because it's dead or something. It's a dead language, so that's why science just use it. But Egyptian gods and stuff like that are really interesting to me because the way they buried their dead, they mummified them, which is just really cool practice. Like, I believe they took out all the important organs except the brain. They gooified the brain. I'll go into that, but like, they put their important organs in jars, and then they basically used salt and stuff, which they had a lot of access to since they're in the desert. They basically salted the body, and then wrapped him in linens and stuff like that, so it would preserve him. And they kept their organs in like airtight jars, and I think they buried them with their treasure and stuff, so they would have all that stuff for the afterlife. But they kept their organs and stuff safe because they believed that they would need them while they're traveling the afterlife. Because I think they thought your thoughts and stuff came from your heart. That's why they thought the brain was just useless. Like, they would put calipers, I want to say. They would put some sort of sharp hook stick through the nose cavity and basically swirl it around and basically gooify your brain, and then it comes out like either stringy or like a puddle because they didn't want to damage anything else. So that's why they did it through the nose cavity, which I just think that's really interesting that they had that kind of grasp because they basically were lobotomizing their dead. But that's besides the point. They had such a grasp of medical knowledge that they could do all of this, even if it is post-mortem. They still figured out where all the organs were, and that they knew they were important. Even if they didn't think the brain was important, they still knew the heart, the lungs, and all that stuff was important. And I'm actually probably going to research their medicines also, because I do know quite a bit about how they mummify them and stuff like that. It's kind of hard to verbalize now that I'm trying, but I used to learn about Greek, like, gods and stuff like that. And all the gods are pretty much the same. They all have gods for, like, the sun, the dead. Like, Hades is the Greek god for death. Anubis is the Egyptian god of death and burial, I'm pretty sure. But I think there was also some, like, similar to the river Styx that you have to cross. I think there was an Egyptian god like that, or not god necessarily, but you had to go travel through the underworld and stuff like that. But I'm going to be researching all that because it's actually really interesting to me. So I'm going to cut this short for today. I shall see you guys in the next part, basically. I hope you enjoyed this 3-part miniseries, even though it's technically not done. Elevator music. Go. Hey guys, I am back after doing some research on Egyptian gods and their cats, and I had to fight to the tooth and nail for this microphone because there is a lot of people doing video podcasts lately, and there is other people in the room right in front of me, so I'm sorry if there is a lot of background noise in this part of the episode. But yeah, let's get started. So, Anubis is one of the most iconic gods of ancient Egypt. Anubis is the Greek version of his name. The ancient Egyptian knew him as Anpu or Inpu. That's so bad. Anubis was an extremely ancient deity whose name appears in the oldest mastabas of the Old Kingdom and the pyramid texts as a guardian and protector of the dead. He was originally a god of the underworld, but became associated specifically with the embalming process and funeral rites. His name is from the same root as the word for a royal child, Inpu. However, it is also closely related to the word imp, which means to decay. And one version of his name, Imp or Amp, most closely resembles that word. As a result, it is possible that his name changed slightly once he was adopted as the son of the king of Cyrus. He was known as Emiut, he who is in the place of embalming. Nubtadusjur, lord of the sacred land. I'm probably butchering these names, by the way, but that's just me because I can't pronounce anything right. The ancient Egyptians held cats in the highest esteem. The penalties for injuring or killing a cat were severe. They worshipped a cat goddess, often represented as half feline, half woman, whom they called Bastet. The main center for the worship of Bastet was in northern Egypt at the city of Bubastis. The festival honoring Bastet was described as one of the largest and most enthusiastically celebrated in all of Egypt by the visiting Greek historian Herodotus. Large catteries were maintained by the temple priests, and a vast cemetery of mummified cats has been excavated outside of Bubastis. Thousands of small cat sculptures, probably left with offerings to the temple by devotees, have also been recovered at Bubastis. Ancient Egyptians seem to have been cat people, or at least cat mummy people. Researchers have dug up several mummified cats alongside about 100 wooden cat statues in a tomb complex near a pyramid built for the pharaoh Userkaf, who reigned from 2291 BC to 2289 BC. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities announced November 10th the burials are located near the site of Saqqara in Egypt. Archaeologists are sorting out precisely when everything dates to, but it appears that sometime between 717 BC and 332 BC, the complex was used for the burial of cats. Perhaps the earliest feline Egyptian goddess recorded was called Mafdet, and is described in the pyramid text as killing a serpent with her claws. A representation of Mafdet, possibly translated as runner, found on a stone base in a tomb at Abydos, approximately 2800 BC. Shows a large cat, probably a cheetah or leopard, while the Egyptian had several other feline goddesses, such as the lioness-headed Sekhmet. Only Bastet was represented by the domesticated cat. So far, tens of cat mummies have been found there, along with the wooden statues which were gilded with gold and may date to the same time. A statue made of bronze showing Bastet, an Egyptian goddess who appears in the shape of a cat, was also discovered, the ministry said. In ancient Egyptian mythology, Bastet had a multitude of powers. On one hand, she was a protective goddess who could fend off a variety of evil threats, while on the other hand, she was also a goddess associated with music, dancing, and pleasure. While we may no longer worship our cats with the same religious fervor of the ancients, we do hold them in very high regard. The goddess Bastet is still considered by many to be the protectress of felines and those that care for them, a task that we have undertaken to assist her in. Great Sphinx of Giza, colossal limestone statue of a recumbent sphinx located in Giza, Egypt, that likely dates from the reign of King Khafre, 2575 C to 2465 BCE, and depicts his face. It is one of Egyptian's most famous landmarks and arguably the best known example of Sphinx art. The Great Sphinx is among the world's largest sculptures, measuring some 240 feet 73 meters long and 66 feet 20 meters high. It features a lion's body and a human head adorned with a royal headdress. The statue was carved from a single piece of limestone, and pigment residue suggests that the entire Sphinx was painted. According to some estimates, it would have taken about 3 years for 100 workers using stone hammers and copper chisels to finish the statue. Well, this is all the research I did today, and I got this from ancientegyptonline.co.uk, catmuseumsf.org, britannica.com, and livescience.com. The links will be in the YouTube video's description, and I hope you guys have a good time, and I hope you enjoyed this 3-part mini-series to my podcast. I will see you guys next time.